Hello, my name is Lorena, and I wasn't supposed to be at Thanksgiving this year. They told me the dinner was canceled for health reasons, but when I showed up anyway, every chair was filled, every plate was served, and my grandmother, in front of everyone, turned to my brother and asked, "Daniel, what happened to the hotel building I handed you?" My father dropped his fork. That was the moment the truth cracked open. Because they hadn't just stolen my name from the deed, they stole my role in the family, my history, my voice. Why would a family erase someone without ever saying a word? The air in Waco always carries a certain sharpness in November, the kind that sneaks under your collar and makes you remember that the year is almost over. That morning I stepped into Grandma Odella's kitchen, and though everything looked the same, the smell of turkey brining, the faint sweetness of cranberries simmering on the stove, something inside me didn't feel right. I stood there for a moment, watching the light stretch across the tiled floor, and I couldn't shake the thought. This dinner was supposed to be a celebration, yet the storm had already started to gather, even if no one else could see it. I had grown used to the rhythms of Thanksgiving in this house, the chatter, the laughter, the endless refills of coffee as dishes lined the counter. But this year, I felt like an outsider in my own family. I knew I'd be smiling across the table, carving pie, pretending to enjoy the moment. Still, underneath the surface, the truth gnawed at me. I wasn't even on the guest list for the real fight, the battle over what was mine, taken from me without my consent. A year ago, things had been different. I can still picture Grandma Odella's hand over mine when she said it. She had pulled me aside, away from the noise of cousins and football games blaring on TV. "Lorena," she told me, her voice steady, "the Hearthstone Inn is yours. On your birthday, I'll sign it over." The Hearthstone wasn't just a building. It was our family's legacy, a colonial-style hotel that had weathered storms, floods, and even a pandemic. When COVID shut everything down, I was the one who stayed. I was the one fixing broken pipes at 2 in the morning, repainting rooms so guests would have a reason to come back, designing a new logo that reminded people of warmth and Southern heritage. My fingerprints were on every brick. Odella knew it. She told me, "This place lives because of you." It was the only recognition I ever wanted. And when she promised the hotel would be mine, I finally felt seen, but the papers never came. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, curiosity and unease pushed me toward the county records office. I remember sitting there under the hum of fluorescent lights, scrolling through the computer database. And then I froze. My name wasn't on the deed. It was Corbin's. My older brother, the one who had barely stepped foot in the Hearthstone except to attend parties and boast to his friends that his family owned it. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred, my throat tightened, my stomach dropped, but I still dialed my mother's number, hoping it was a clerical error. Varela answered like she always did, clipped, impatient. "Mom, the title. It says Corbin owns it now. What happened?" There was a pause, the kind that tells you someone is deciding whether to lie. "It's better this way, honey," she finally said. "You don't want the stress of running a business long term. Your brother is more suited for it." I sat there, clutching the phone, trying to breathe. Her words weren't concern, they were dismissal. A lifetime of effort cut away in one sentence, all in the name of protecting me. Protecting me from what? My own competence. I walked out of the records office into the chilly air, but the cold I felt wasn't from the wind. It was from the sudden realization that my family had made a decision without me. A week later, I learned the full extent of it. A cousin, not realizing what she had done, forwarded me a screenshot of the family group chat. They had held a meeting the month before to discuss the hotel transition. Everyone was there. Corbin, my father Randall, my mother, and Jalen. Jalen, of all people. My ex-boyfriend, who also happened to be the family's attorney now. And me? I had been quietly removed from the chat. Just like that. No explanation. No seat at the table. It wasn't just about a building anymore. It was about erasing my voice, making sure I couldn't argue, couldn't resist. That night, I drove to the hotel parking lot and sat there staring at the lit windows. The Hearthstone looked warm, welcoming to the world. To me, it looked like a stranger. I thought about every late night I spent balancing the books, every repair I coordinated, every guest review that mentioned the friendly woman at the front desk, without knowing I was also the one keeping the doors open. And now, I had been rewritten out of the story. When I finally got home, I dug through a drawer and pulled out an old photograph. It was me and Grandma Odella, standing in the hotel lobby years ago. She was holding a bouquet. I was smiling despite the paint still drying on the walls. That photo used to hang right in the entryway, welcoming guests. Now, it was just a memory I held in trembling hands. I stepped outside with the picture, the night air colder than it had been all day. My breath came out in a cloud, but what shook me wasn't the temperature. It was humiliation, the kind that seeps into your bones when you realize your family thinks your silence is easier than your truth. "They want me quiet," I whispered to the dark. And yet, deep inside, there wasn't rage, not yet. There was only a sharp clarity, the kind that comes right before a storm breaks, because I knew at that moment, if I didn't speak soon, they would write the story without me. The last time I trusted Jalen, he kissed me. This time, he forged my name. That thought stayed with me as I sat in my car the next morning, the engine idling outside a diner I used to love. I wasn't there for pancakes or coffee. I just needed somewhere to be that wasn't home, somewhere I wouldn't be asked if I was okay. Small towns are full of "how are yous" from people who already know the answer but want to hear you lie. I pulled the Waco Tribune-Herald out of the dispenser near the door, slid into a corner booth, and opened it like I was scanning the obituaries. What I found felt like one. Corbin Elwood wins Heritage Award for restoration of the Hearthstone Inn. There was a picture, him smiling next to some city councilman, holding a framed certificate. The headline hit like a gut punch, each word a reminder that I was being erased from the story of something I built. I didn't even know he had submitted anything for consideration. I hadn't received a call, not even a mention. I sat there staring at the photo while my untouched coffee cooled. The article praised the visionary rebranding, the savvy business repositioning, the decisive leadership during post-pandemic recovery. It was a tribute written for the man who, by all public accounts, had resurrected the inn. The truth. I was the one who kept it from dying. That article made one thing certain. I needed to see the place again. Not from the parking lot. I had to walk through the halls, touch the walls, find out how deep the rewriting went. By the time I pulled into the Hearthstone's lot, it was past noon. I parked in the back and entered through the side door, still unlocked for guests during daylight hours. I smoothed my coat, ran fingers through my hair, and walked in like I belonged, which I did, more than anyone. The lobby had changed, but not in the way you'd expect. The structure was the same, but the soul had been bleached out. Where there used to be family photos and handwritten chalkboard greetings, now there were gold-plated signs. Reimagined by Corbin Elwood. Even the font made my teeth grind. A receptionist, young, probably college-aged, sat behind the new marble desk. She smiled politely, clearly not recognizing me. I smiled back, didn't say a word, and let my gaze drift behind her. The photo was gone, the one of me and Grandma Odella standing on opening day, laughing with paint still on our arms. It used to hang in the center of the lobby, right beneath the fireplace mantel. In its place, a staged photo of Corbin shaking hands with a man in a gray suit, the kind of polished investor who'd never set foot here during the hard days. The plaque beneath read, "A vision secured." It took everything in me not to pull it off the wall. Instead, I walked the perimeter like a guest getting a feel for the place. I nodded at the front desk girl when she asked if I needed anything and told her I was just revisiting old memories. She smiled, oblivious. "Enjoy your stay." I went straight to the office hallway. Back when I managed the place, my desk had been tucked into the old converted pantry, right off the kitchen. The room was supposed to be remodeled into storage, guess they hadn't gotten to it yet. The doorknob was still loose. I nudged it open with my shoulder, heart pounding harder than it should have. The room hadn't changed much. Same dusty shelves, same humming mini-fridge. I scanned the filing cabinets and tried not to dwell on how many hours I'd spent here late at night, eating peanut butter crackers and sorting vendor invoices. On the third drawer of the cabinet, labeled 2020-2021, I found it, the deed file. There it was, the application to transfer title. And at the bottom, a signature, my name, scribbled in a way that looked familiar, but wrong. I stared at it for a full minute before pulling out my phone and snapping photos. The curve of the L was too sharp, the spacing between the U and the R, off. My actual signature had rhythm, a natural lean. This one was a mimic, a performance. Whoever did this practiced, but not enough. There was a yellow sticky note on the back of the folder, a name, Jalen, followed by, "Get Corbin's final okay before notarizing." I felt like someone had poured cold water down my back. It was one thing to suspect, it was another to see my name impersonated in ink, filed away like a formality. I backed out of the room, retraced my steps to the lobby, and left without speaking. The receptionist didn't look up this time. In the car, I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over a contact I should have deleted months ago. Jalen. My finger tapped the screen. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Lorena." Like we were catching up after a vacation. I cut him off. "I saw the transfer forms." A pause. "You signed them," he said quickly, too quickly. "At Grandma's that day, remember? We had lunch." "No," I said. "We didn't." Another pause, the kind that says, "I'm thinking of how to spin this." "You were under a lot of stress," he tried. "Maybe you don't remember. It was all in the family's best interest." "You forged my signature." Silence. "You signed the papers, Lorena." "I was there." I leaned back against the headrest, forcing myself not to yell. "You were never there." "Not really." Click. I ended the call. The sun had started to dip behind the trees, casting long shadows over the hotel's facade. Hearthstone glowed gold in the late light, warm and welcoming to the world. It looked exactly like the place I used to love. But inside, I knew something was gone, something had cracked open. I sat in my car until the parking lot emptied. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I opened the gallery on my phone, tapped on the photo of the forged signature, and saved it to a new folder labeled Proof. Then I whispered into the silence, if they want a ghost story, they've just created one. If Corbin forged my erasure, Jalen signed it with a kiss. I didn't sleep that night. I tried, of course. I brushed my teeth like usual, folded a throw blanket on the couch I never used, even turned on that calming rain sound app on my phone. But nothing softened the weight in my chest. It just sat there, like a lead box right beneath my ribs, too heavy to move and too sharp to ignore. At some point after 2 a.m., I gave up and went downstairs. I boiled water for tea I didn't want, staring at the steam rising like smoke signals. I couldn't stop hearing his voice. Not the one from the call, but the older one. From a time that felt like a different life. "Your hands are in every inch of this place," Jalen had told me, back when I was repainting the guest room hallway. "This hotel, it's your soul in bricks." He used to come by in the evenings, sometimes with takeout, sometimes just to sit beside me while I worked. We'd eat at the front desk counter under dim lights, talking about someday, how we'd run it together, how I'd handle the operations and he'd manage the business side. He said he liked watching me build things. Looking back now, maybe that's exactly what he wanted to learn, how to steal something without making it look like theft. That memory, the one of him bringing me a mocha with extra foam and stealing a kiss behind the lobby curtain, that's the one that hit hardest now. I used to think he was my safe place, my one person. Turns out, he was my final blind spot. By the time the sun came up, I had made a decision. I'd gone through the motions long enough. If they were going to treat me like a ghost, then I'd haunt the truth right back into their lives. I waited until just after dark that evening to return to the Hearthstone. I parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance on foot, coat zipped tight, hands stuffed into my pockets. The streets were quiet. Most guests would be out to dinner or inside their rooms. That was always the lull time, between early evening check-ins and late-night fire pit chatter. I told the concierge at the front desk I had a meeting with someone from the board. She didn't ask questions. No one ever questions confidence. I bypassed the public hallway and slipped through the staff door, a path I knew better than my own kitchen. It still smelled like lemon polish and burnt coffee from the break room. Jalen's office was on the second floor, tucked into the administrative wing near the linen storage. He'd taken it over last year after assuming a more involved role, which now sounded a lot like plotting in a suit. The door was locked, but the frame hadn't changed. I pulled the flathead key I kept on my ring, originally used for stuck drawer locks, and jimmied it open with one careful twist. I'd trained staff to do this when keys went missing. Funny how the things I taught them were now the tools I used to survive them. Inside, it was exactly what I expected. Tidy, clinical, soulless. A small bookshelf stood near the window, beside a metal filing cabinet labeled alphabetically. On his desk, a ceramic mug with the words, "Trust me, I'm a lawyer." I stared at it longer than I should have. I moved quickly. Second drawer down, L. There it was, a thick folder with a post-it in his looping handwriting, transfer package, LE. I opened it on the desk, each page like another layer peeling off my skin. The first few were typed documents, declaration of interest, property reallocation clauses, a general agreement of title transfer. On each, my name was typed. Below them, versions of my signature. Not one of them was mine. They were close. Familiar strokes. Enough to fool a stranger or even a distracted notary. But I saw it instantly. The hesitation in the curves. The way the N didn't loop like mine always did. This wasn't a signature. This was a forgery with good intentions. Or worse, intended to look accidental. I flipped through the packet and found a note clipped to the back of the last draft. Get Corbin's final okay before submitting to county clerk. They had planned it together, step by step. I wasn't just removed. I was replaced, legally, strategically, intentionally. A door slammed downstairs. I flinched, nearly dropping the folder. I glanced at the clock, 9:13 p.m. Still early, but I had to move fast. I took photos of every page with my phone, careful to get the handwritten note in full. I didn't take the originals. Not yet. No need to give them more reason to scream theft when all I was doing was reclaiming my life. On my way out, I paused just before closing the drawer. There was a photo frame half buried under some spare office keys. I pulled it out. It was us, me and Jalen. At a 4th of July barbecue, back when I still thought relationships were built on things like trust. I looked young, soft. He looked smug even then, but I hadn't seen it. Or maybe I had, and wanted to believe it was confidence. I left the frame on the desk, face down. I didn't go straight home. I drove, past our old date spots, past the courthouse where he once swore he'd never be like the lawyers who twist things to win. Past the dog park we used to visit on Sundays. My hand gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned pale. Eventually, I pulled into an empty parking lot near the florist closed for the night. The neon open sign had been switched off, and the only light was from a street lamp flickering in the wind. That's where it hit me. Not like a punch, not even like a breakdown. It was softer, like the last string snapping inside a violin. No noise, just the end of music. So that's how it ends, I murmured. Not in court. In a folder marked LE. The tears didn't come fast, but they did come. And they weren't just for the signature, or for the hotel, or even for Jalen. They were for every version of me I had sacrificed along the way to keep the peace. The one who smiled when people said, "You're so calm." The one who bit her tongue in meetings. The one who let others take credit because it's just easier that way. I mourned her, and I promised I wouldn't resurrect her. When I got home, I walked straight to the hallway closet and pulled out the photo box. I sat on the living room floor, back against the couch, and went through every snapshot of us. I ripped them slowly, one by one, no theatrics, just truth. Except for one. It was a candid shot. Jalen sitting on the patio, my dog Bailey curled at his feet, both of them half asleep in the sun. Bailey's gone now. Cancer took her last winter. That photo wasn't about him. It was about the part of me that still believed in stillness, in love that didn't need explanation. So I kept it, Because even liars can smile when no one's watching. If they wanted to call me emotional, I'd show them what controlled rage looks like. I woke up with my teeth clenched, the taste of last night's betrayal still lingering on my tongue. The folder, the photos, the forged signature. It didn't feel like a dream. It was all too deliberate, too clean, the kind of theft that only people in suits get away with, until someone puts it under a microscope. The morning air felt heavier than usual, thick with something unspoken. I sat on my sagging couch, legs folded beneath me, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday. The TV was already on, though I hadn't meant to turn it on. Maybe I'd bumped the remote in my sleep. Or maybe the universe had decided to pour salt on open wounds. Up next on Channel 4, Waco's own Corbin Elwood receives the 2024 Heritage Award for Historic Preservation. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just stared. There he was, on the screen, shaking hands with the mayor like he'd just solved homelessness. That same half-smile he always wore when he thought he'd gotten away with something. Behind him stood the hearthstone, dressed in warm lights and fall wreaths, like a commercial for Southern charm. The anchor's voice glowed with admiration. Mr. Elwood spearheaded the restoration of the beloved Hearthstone Inn, revitalizing one of Waco's treasured landmarks. They played footage of the lobby, the floors I scrubbed, the curtains I hand-stitched, the layout I redesigned. My fingerprint was in every shot, but not once did they say my name, not once. The camera zoomed in on the grand staircase, the very one I'd slipped down 3 winters ago while hauling a box of linens because Corbin hadn't shown up to help with inventory. Now he was being praised for vision and perseverance. They even highlighted the unique branding, which I had spent 3 weeks agonizing over down to the serif font. I turned the TV off, not with the remote, with my fist. The silence afterward was deafening. I sat there, the screen black and my knuckles pulsing. That building wasn't just my job. It was my home, my effort, my legacy. But I had been erased so cleanly, it almost looked like I was never there. Later that afternoon, I ran into Mrs. Greer from the church while picking up groceries. She was examining sweet potatoes with the intensity of someone solving a math problem, but her face lit up when she saw me. "Lorena, I saw your brother on TV this morning," she said, beaming. "What an achievement! You must be so proud." Proud. I smiled, because that's what women like me are taught to do. Then I nodded and said, "He's been very busy." She patted my arm like I'd raised the boy myself. "Your mama must be thrilled." Thrilled, I thought, or relieved, that I wasn't the one standing there. That Corbin could be their polished poster child while I stayed in the background, cleaning up the mess. Back in the car, I texted my mom. "Did you see the interview?" The reply came faster than I expected. "Yes, he's stepping up. You should support him." Support him, like I hadn't supported this family through every financial dip. Like I hadn't sacrificed nights, weekends, and my last relationship just to keep Hearthstone afloat. This wasn't about business anymore. It was about something deeper. It was about erasing me from a story I wrote. I didn't think. I just drove. 15 minutes later, I was standing in front of my parents' house, that same colonial-style porch with the rocking chair no one ever sat in. I didn't knock. I walked straight in. Dad was in the garage, pretending to organize tools that hadn't been used in years. He looked up, startled, then quickly returned to scrubbing a wrench with a rag like it owed him money. "Where's Mom?" I asked. "In the kitchen," he said, not meeting my eyes. Varela was stirring something on the stove. She didn't turn around when I entered. "You could have told them," I said. She didn't answer. "You could have told the news. You could have corrected the lie." Still silence. "You could have mentioned me. Just once." Finally, she turned. "This isn't about you, Lorena." I laughed. It wasn't funny, but it was all I had. "Then what is it about?" She wiped her hands on a dish towel with deliberate slowness. "It's about moving forward. Corbin is ready for this. You never liked being in the spotlight. You said it yourself. I also said I ran that place for 3 years without a single family member showing up to help. You never wanted the pressure, remember? You said it wore you down. I was tired, I snapped. Not incompetent. She crossed her arms. This is what's best for everyone. I felt something in my chest rip. That place was mine, I said. My voice shook, but I didn't care. My hands built it. My hours. My sweat. You're being dramatic, she said. You always get so emotional. It was like she'd punched me with a sentence. That word, emotional, was always her way of dismissing me. It was how she wrapped up every disagreement with a bow, as if my frustration was a personal flaw instead of a justified reaction. I didn't say another word. I turned, walked out the front door, and didn't stop until I hit the gravel of the side road near their mailbox. I kept walking, past the familiar fences and fields, until there was nothing but open land ahead of me. Then I screamed. Not a sob, not a cry, a scream, loud and long and jagged. There was no one around to hear it, and even if there had been, I doubt they'd recognize the sound as mine, because I wasn't being emotional. I was being erased. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and fingers hovering over the keyboard. I didn't go looking for comfort. I went looking for ammunition. I typed in search terms I never thought I'd need. Texas deed fraud. Whistleblower legal protection real estate. Power of attorney abuse. Then I started a new folder on my desktop. Case, Hearthstone, Lorena Vaiz, Elwood. Inside it, I saved the pictures of the forged signature, the sticky note with Jalen's handwriting, the marketing materials that excluded me, and the news clip of Corbin accepting an award for work he never did. My hand hovered over the trackpad as I named the final subfolder, Exhibits. Then I saved one last document, a Word file with only 3 lines. This isn't about revenge. This is about truth. And I won't be silenced. I closed the lid. Nothing about this moment felt triumphant. It felt surgical, cold, necessary. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something else too. In control. They locked me out of the building, but not the truth, and not the law. It was a Thursday morning when I returned to the Hearthstone, the same morning fog curling across the lawn like smoke from a tired fire. The parking lot had that glossy sheen after a light drizzle, and I parked in my usual spot, out of habit more than anything else. The plan was simple: grab my old design journal and the charger I'd left in my desk drawer. I told myself I wasn't there to make a scene. I swiped my keycard at the side entrance, the one near the break room where I used to sneak in coffee and muffins for staff meetings. The light blinked red. I tried again, slower, still red. I stepped back, shook the card in my hand like it was an etch-a-sketch, and tried one more time. The same cold rejection stared back at me. Inside, I could hear someone laughing. Probably a guest, maybe one of the new staff, or maybe just the sound of a place that had moved on without me. I walked around to the front, feeling the dampness cling to my sleeves. The lobby looked untouched, and almost identical to when I'd designed it 2 years ago. The planters I had chosen were still near the door. The magazine rack still leaned slightly to the left, no matter how often I asked someone to level it. Behind the desk stood someone I didn't recognize, young, fresh-faced, hair pinned back like a news anchor. "Hi, can I help you?" she asked with a chirpy smile that made my chest tighten. "I used to manage this place," I replied, voice steady. "I just came to pick up a few of my personal items. Should be in the admin office." She hesitated, then glanced at her screen. "What's your name again?" "Lorena Elwood." Her fingers paused on the keyboard. Her eyes flicked to me, and I could see it happening, the recognition followed by discomfort. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said finally. "Your access has been revoked by Mr. Elwood. I'm not authorized to let you in." There it was. No drama, no raised voices, just a simple sentence that gutted me. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I turned to leave, but not before I caught the whisper. A man sitting on one of the lobby couches leaned toward his wife. "Isn't that the lady who used to work here? Used to work here. Used to matter." I stepped outside without a word, shoes echoing on the tile. I didn't cry. Not then. I'd run out of tears for this place. But something inside me did flinch, like an old joint you thought had healed. As I passed the front window, a flash of movement caught my eye. The lobby flat screen played a looping promotional video. I paused just long enough to watch. The hearthstone, bright and glowing. Drone shots sweeping over the patio I rebuilt. The front desk gleaming like a postcard. Staff smiling, guests toasting wine glasses. Narration played over it all. Corbin's voice. From broken roots, we rebuilt Hearthstone. We? I stepped closer. My eyes scanned every frame. The layout was mine. The staging was mine. Even the music was from the playlist I used during reopening week. But I wasn't in a single shot. Even in the group scenes, the camera cut away before it caught my face. My back appeared once, speaking to a contractor, but the audio was dubbed over. It was like watching my own life, but with the main character removed. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, the screen casting soft light across a notepad filled with scribbles and dates. I pulled up the hotel's official website. New branding, new mission statement, same bones, my bones. The About Us page listed Corbin as the visionary behind the renovation. There was even a line about transformational leadership during uncertain times. I clicked on the video again, watched the full 3 minutes. They hadn't just replaced me. They edited me out. I scrolled down and hit Contact Webmaster. But I didn't write a complaint. Instead, I opened a new tab, created a fresh YouTube account under a generic name, uploaded a private, unlisted video. It was simple, just a slideshow. Images of the hearthstone during the pandemic, tarp over windows, construction gear piled in corners, me standing with paint-stained hands and a clipboard, me teaching staff how to use the new POS system, me in work boots and a ponytail, hauling chairs up the stairs because Corbin was too busy. Over it all, my voice. They'll tell you who built it, but they won't show you who kept the lights on. I didn't care if anyone saw it. It wasn't for them. It was for the truth. I titled it, The Unseen Architect. Then I drafted an email to Corbin. No subject line, no greeting, just one sentence. Your narrative is legally impressive. I hope you're as creative when this gets to court. I hit send. There was no reply. But silence can be louder than shouting. And his silence told me everything. This wasn't about family anymore. This was chess. And I had just made the opening move. The paperwork may be digital, but the damage is very, very real. I left my house just after sunrise the next morning, coffee in one hand, a flash drive in the other. Temple was an hour away, and I drove with the kind of focus usually reserved for surgeons and bomb technicians. I didn't listen to music, didn't make phone calls. My mind stayed sharp on one thing, what I was about to do. The law office sat between a nail salon and a used bookstore, just off the main strip. I'd chosen it for a reason. It wasn't local. Nobody here had gone to school with my brother. Nobody owed my mother a favor. No one would talk about me after I left. The receptionist led me to a narrow conference room with mismatched chairs and a dry erase board that hadn't been wiped clean in weeks. I didn't care. I wasn't here for ambiance. When the attorney entered, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a strong handshake, I didn't waste time. My name is Lorena Elwood, I began. And I believe my family has committed deed fraud, forged a power of attorney, and potentially exploited my grandmother. I brought proof. She sat down slowly, pulling out a legal pad as I slid the flash drive across the table. As she opened the first document, I watched her expression shift from neutral to disturbed. You have receipts, emails, and signature comparisons? I nodded. And this promotional video, you're not shown once, even though you're the lead on the renovation? I nodded again. She glanced at me, brows lifting. You have a case. For the first time in weeks, my chest didn't feel so tight. Within an hour, she'd drafted the formal paperwork. A full civil complaint against Corbin Elwood, filed under grounds of fraudulent transfer, forgery, and abuse of fiduciary duty. A separate note recommended we look into possible elder exploitation under state law. When she handed me the pen to sign, I didn't hesitate. My name, my real name. On the right line, After I left the office, I sat in my car for a long time, watching people walk by with lunch bags and strollers, living lives untouched by betrayal. I wasn't jealous, just aware. Some people's problems were loud, mine wore suits and smiled for the camera. That evening, I returned home, parked in the gravel driveway, and stepped out into the crisp fall air. The porch light hadn't kicked on yet. I took a breath, turned toward the front door, and found my grandmother standing there, holding her iPad. She looked small, but focused. "Lorena," she said, "is the hearthstone for sale?" Her voice wasn't angry, just bewildered, but the question made my heart stutter. I don't know," I answered. She handed me the tablet. On the screen was a Zillow listing, a fresh one. Fully modernized, award-winning historic property, open for private equity purchase. Contact, Corbin Elwood. I stared at the screen. The pictures showed the lobby, the rooms, even the courtyard garden. But none of them showed her. Or me. Only him. "That photo is a lie," I muttered. "The words are worse," she whispered back. We sat on the edge of the porch together, the iPad between us. For a long while, we didn't speak. Then, slowly, she said, "I gave him stewardship, not ownership. What has he done?" I swallowed hard. My throat felt scraped raw. "He forged a signature," I said. "He removed me from meetings, changed my keycard access, used Jalen to make it all look clean. And now, he's selling it." Odella closed her eyes. The lines on her face looked deeper than usual, like something inside her had shifted. "I trusted him because he was loud," she murmured. You were quiet, so I assumed you didn't want it." I didn't respond. She wasn't wrong. "But I see now," she said, opening her eyes again. "You weren't quiet. You were ignored." I turned to her. "What do you want me to do?" She met my gaze, solid and sure. "I want you to do it your way, and I'll do it mine." The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with 3 things: a pot of coffee, my laptop, and a photo of the original Hearthstone team, the one with me and Grandma at the ribbon cutting. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes before typing. "To the Waco Heritage Board, my name is Lorena Elwood. I was the project lead, interior designer, financial coordinator, and operational manager for the Hearthstone Inn renovation between 2020 and 2023. I attached photos, budget spreadsheets, emails, and the unlisted YouTube link to the unseen architect. I sent it to the board, then to the City Preservation Committee, then finally to the Waco Journal. Before I hit send on the last one, I whispered, "Let's see if history likes clean copies or messy truths." Later that afternoon, I drove to the Hearthstone again. I didn't go inside, didn't need to. I stood across the street, pulled out my phone, and started snapping pictures. Angles, shadows, light falling on the sidewalk just right. The way the gold-plated sign reflected in the lobby glass. Document everything before they try to repaint the truth. That night, after dinner, I sat down to draft one final message. To Corbin, subject line, legal notification of intent to file, deed fraud forgery, no message body, just a single PDF attachment, 72 pages, proof. I clicked send. I didn't expect a reply, but the message was already loud enough. The dinner ended, but the reckoning, that had only just begun. I hadn't planned on walking into that house with my fists metaphorically raised. Thanksgiving was supposed to be peaceful, at least on the surface. But there's a certain violence in being forced to sit through a family meal with people who've taken from you and continue to smile like they deserve a blessing. Thanksgiving morning arrived with clear skies and cold air. Grandma Odella insisted the dinner still happen. "Just family this year," she said, as if we hadn't already proven how little that word could mean. I offered to skip it, told her I didn't need the turkey or the forced smiles, but she looked at me with that firm, unblinking stare that had ended 1,000 debates when I was a kid. "No," she said, "you need to be there. All of them do." So I came. I wore black, not because I meant to be dramatic, but because it was the only clean thing that didn't require ironing. I brought a pie, store-bought, plastic wrap still on, and set it on the counter without fanfare. Inside, the mood was stiff. Too many folded napkins, too much fake laughing. Corbin, of course, was already there. Smiling too wide. Laughing too loud. Varela kept busy in the kitchen, pulling out pie after pie like it would keep her hands from shaking. Randall avoided eye contact, polishing the same wine glass for 10 minutes. And me? I sat on the edge of the room like a ghost watching my own wake. Dinner was served buffet style. The long dining room table had its centerpiece, a gaudy cornucopia made of wicker and dried wheat stalks. The kids ran in and out of the room. Distant relatives I barely remembered commented on the stuffing. Then came the toasts. Uncle Barry raised his glass. To family, and to Corbin, for making all of us proud this year. I didn't drink. Corbin leaned back, puffed up like a politician. Thanks, Uncle. Just doing my part to preserve what matters. People clapped. Jalen was there too. Sat across from me, pretending to sip wine, eyes darting away every time mine met his. I didn't speak to him, didn't even nod. Corbin, emboldened by the attention, launched into one of his stories. You know, when we first looked at the Hearthstone's budget, I said, this place is a gold mine waiting to be polished. Took a lot of long nights and number crunching. But hey, look at it now. Laughter, admiration, and then silence. Grandma Odella had cleared her throat. It was subtle, barely a sound, but everything froze. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even lift her gaze from her plate. Daniel, she said, her voice calm and steady, what happened to the hotel building I handed you? The clatter of silverware rang through the room as Corbin's fork hit the china. Dead silence followed. Someone coughed. Someone else shifted in their chair. What? Corbin asked, chuckling nervously. I asked, she repeated, louder this time, what happened to the building I gave you? He cleared his throat. Well, we, agreed on some updates. Renovations. And, we optimized the equity model. You sold it, she interrupted, her voice sharp now. He blinked. Not exactly. Did you or did you not put the Hearthstone up for sale? Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It cut through the room like a blade. He stammered. We were exploring financial flexibility, aligning with market conditions. You sold my legacy. Corbin tried again, this time leaning forward like that would make his lies land better. It was for tax reasons, strategic restructuring, to secure future partnerships. No more turkey for you, she said. Then she stood. No anger, just finality. She placed her napkin on the table, adjusted her sweater, and walked out of the dining room without another word. The only sound after that was the fireplace crackling and the deep exhale of someone who knew they'd just been exposed. Everyone turned to look at me. I didn't gloat, I didn't stand or make a speech. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out a folded envelope, and placed it gently in front of Corbin's untouched plate. He didn't touch it. Didn't move. I walked out, the sound of my own shoes on hardwood the only farewell I offered. Outside, the cold was sharp. I breathed it in like oxygen after a long swim. I didn't look back. Inside that envelope was a full copy of the legal filing, all 72 pages. I didn't need to explain anything. The document spoke louder than I ever could. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't owe anyone at that table an explanation. They had written me out of the story, but I'd written myself back in, with ink that couldn't be edited, deleted, or ignored. I got my building back. But it was never about the building. The following Monday, the Waco Herald ran the headline in bold black print. Fraud allegations hit historic Hearthstone ownership. I didn't have to buy the paper. The front page was on every screen at the gas station, the pharmacy, even the dry cleaners where folks usually just gossiped about football and weekend yard sales. The article didn't hold back. And it named Corbin directly, mentioned the forged documents, cited the pending civil complaint and the attached exhibits. There was a quote from the Board of Heritage Preservation. All grant funding tied to Mr. Elwood's leadership is suspended pending investigation. Someone had leaked my filing. I didn't ask who. The same day, a press release from the Texas Bar Association announced a formal inquiry into Jalen's role as legal counsel in a suspected conflict of interest and ethical misconduct. His name wasn't trending, but in our town, it didn't need to be. Whispers move faster than headlines. I stayed quiet, didn't post, didn't gloat, just folded my laundry, answered emails, and let the fire spread without lifting a single match. That afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Virila standing there, holding a pie she clearly hadn't baked. For a moment, we just looked at each other. She finally said, "I just wanted peace in the family." I let her in. She sat on the same couch where I had cried over that first forged signature. I made tea because it felt like something to do with my hands. "I didn't want it to come to this," she said quietly. "All this shame, the news, the whispers. Then maybe someone should have stopped the theft before it needed to be reported." She shook her head. "You're so much like your grandmother. Quiet until it counts." I didn't smile. "Peace that requires my silence isn't peace," I said, evenly. "That's compliance. That's complicity." She blinked, clearly unsure of how to respond. Her hand tightened around the mug I'd given her, fingers curling like she was bracing for something more. But I didn't yell, didn't demand anything. We sat in silence. Two women who had shared a kitchen, a last name, and now, too much distance to close in one afternoon. I didn't offer her forgiveness, and she didn't ask for it. When she left, the pie still sat on the counter. 2 days later, I met with my attorney in a neutral conference room rented in Waco. The mediation was brief. Corbin didn't show. Sent a representative instead, some lawyer from Dallas who kept glancing at his watch. They offered a settlement. I declined. Eventually, Odella's original will, thankfully signed and notarized well before Corbin's antics, was reinstated. The hearthstone was mine again. My attorney looked at me across the table. "You want to reopen it? Rebrand it? We could spin this into a hell of a story." I shook my head. "No, I don't want guests." He raised a brow. "Then what do you want to do?" I paused. And then, for the first time, I said it out loud. "I want to open it as a shelter. For women who've been erased, like me." He nodded slowly, folded his notes, and didn't argue. A week later, renovations began. Not a total overhaul, just cleaning out the ego. The gold-plated plaques with Corbin's name were unscrewed and melted down at a local metal shop. The entrance was repainted a soft sage green. The reception desk returned to its original spot before he had moved it for better feng shui. And in the main hallway, a mural took shape. 3 women, one sweeping a floor, one sewing curtains, one placing a flower beside a bed. No faces, no names, just action. I didn't want this place to feel like mine alone. I wanted it to feel like home for someone else who'd been pushed out of their own story. Opening day came on a quiet Saturday. No press, no announcement. I unlocked the doors at 7 a.m., brewed a fresh pot of coffee, and set out muffins on a tray I found in storage. By 8:15, our first guest arrived. She looked tired, not physically, just in that bone-deep way that said she hadn't felt safe in a long time. She sat at the kitchen table, wrapped her hands around the coffee mug, and didn't speak for nearly 10 minutes. Finally, she looked up at me. "I don't know who you are," she said softly, "but this place feels safe." I smiled. That's the idea. I didn't need a ribbon cutting or a front-page feature. I didn't need to be called brave or strong or vindicated. I had my name, my breath, my space, and I had a key to a building that didn't just belong to me. It served the women I'd once been. The building was back in my name. The lock clicked open with a familiar weight, and the kitchen smelled like fresh paint and cinnamon. But I didn't feel victorious. Not exactly. It was something softer, something I hadn't felt in years. Release. A few days after the shelter opened, Grandma invited me to tea. It was the first time we sat together in the Hearthstone's sunroom since everything happened. She'd asked for chamomile, with honey, not sugar, and I brought her the ceramic teapot she loved, the one we used to save for guests. She was dressed in navy, her hair pinned neatly, a pair of pearl earrings glinting softly under the light. When I sat down, she reached beneath her chair and pulled out a small wooden box, something old, with tiny brass hinges and initials carved faintly into the top. "I kept this," she said, pushing it toward me. "Didn't trust digital." Inside was a folded piece of cream-colored paper, worn at the edges, creased from being read and reread. It was a handwritten version of her original will, no lawyers, no boilerplate. Just her words, written in black ink, stating that the Hearthstone belonged to me. Tucked behind it was a single index card in her familiar script. "What they stole can be returned. What they lost can't." My eyes stung, but the tears never fell. Not out of restraint, just peace. "Thank you," I said simply. She reached over and held my hand. "You didn't need this to prove it was yours, but sometimes it's good to have something no one else touched." The next week, a single email slid into my inbox from Corbin. Subject line, I saw the article. Message, if I could go back, I'd choose differently. I wanted to feel important. No apology, just that. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my desktop folder titled Hearthstone Litigation. I created a subfolder, named it Unanswered, dropped his email inside, then I closed it and never opened it again. By late November, the mural Malis had been working on in the back hallway was finally done. She'd been quiet about it, just asked for space and brought her own brushes. When I walked in that morning, she was standing back with her arms crossed, a spot of red paint on her cheek. "It's finished," she said. The final panel showed a woman standing at a window. Not a literal portrait, no face, no detailed features, just her silhouette, looking out into soft light. "That one's for you," Malis said. I shook my head. "No, that one's for who I used to be. She's the one who fought to get me here." She didn't argue. That afternoon, I swept the front porch while a few of the women staying inside folded donated blankets and rearranged the pantry. The house buzzed gently, like it was alive again. Around 4, Varela showed up. She didn't bring pie this time. No flowers. No pretense. Just herself. She stood on the porch like someone unsure if she was welcome. I motioned for her to come in, and she did, arms crossed, shoulders tight. "I didn't know," she said, after a long silence, "how much you were holding." I nodded slowly. "I didn't need you to know. I needed you to listen." There wasn't much else to say. We stood near the door, not quite facing each other. "I'm sorry," she added, "for what it's worth." I didn't answer, not because I didn't believe her, but because I didn't need the words. We didn't hug. There was no dramatic resolution. Just quiet understanding that this wasn't reconciliation, it was a boundary. Later that evening, when the women had gone to their rooms and the kitchen light dimmed, I walked through the hallway alone. I passed the mural again, my fingers brushing against the last panel, the one with the woman at the window, and for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to cry or scream or rewrite anything. Narration came to me like a whisper. Some stories don't need villains, just consequences, and sometimes the only justice is that I never needed them to say sorry. I stepped out onto the porch. The air was crisp, the stars clear. I didn't smile, but I breathed. Fully, and that, finally, was enough. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones you fight in silence, against your own family, your own doubt, and the version of you they tried to erase. But standing your ground doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it's signing your name, one last time, on the truth. What would you do if your legacy was taken behind your back, by the people who raised you? If this story made you feel something, anger, sadness, or maybe strength, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, real-life inspired stories. There's more to come.